Good morning. Welcome to another Kerfuffle showcase. And I am delighted to have David Bowman here from Compliance Matters. David, hello. How are you, sir?
Morning, very well. Nice to be here. Thanks for asking me on.
Good. We obviously didn't get you any pink Kerfuffle merch, but we'll race that to you afterwards anyway. That's one of the things
Please
we do. David, obviously, compliance is an absolutely vital area for any sort of business there. Do you want to just give us an overview about, obviously, the clues in the name, but just give us a bit of background about what the business does and your own part in it, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, well, I've been running Compliance Matters now for 25 years, so it's not a new business. Before that, I worked in trading standards, actually.
Okay.
Had a bit of a midlife crisis and decided I needed to do something else and start my own business. So I thought estate agency and letting agency compliance was a good area. It was probably a mistake back 20. But nobody was interested in compliance back in 1994 when I first started. But I managed to get some business and did some work with what was then the National Association of Estate Agents and got some clients on board. I'm basically providing all the help that agents need to make sure they're compliant with legislation. Back in those days, it was the Property Misdescriptions Act.
Good old PMA.
Yeah, good old PMA. And it's all changed from there. And as time's gone on, compliance has become more and more important for agents. It's become more and more of a focus for government. So therefore, there's been more and more legislation and more focus on it.
I mean, it genuinely does seem to be obviously just a never-ending trend, does there, of increasing legislation and everything. I suppose it's a bit difficult to ask you. Do you ever feel any kind of sympathy for the agents that there does, or do you think it genuinely does increase the standards and therefore I don't want to say a necessary evil, but is required?
Well, it's definitely a necessary evil, that's for sure. And I do have some sympathy for agents because the job is to list properties and sell them and find tenants, and compliance is a secondary issue.
Yeah.
In actual fact, estate agents are probably one of the most regulated professions there is around. They've got all sorts of specific legislation that they've got to comply with, as well as all the raft of general legislation they've got to comply with. So yeah, I do have sympathy for them, and I know that compliance is never the top of anybody's list or really something that anybody's interested in. But what we try and do is bring it up that agenda a little bit, because it's important to get it right. Some of the penalties you can get if you get it wrong are very high, and it's increasing, well, all the time. It just never seems to end these days.
Can I just ask you about one of the problems? I assume it's legality, but we're talking there about the TSOs and the trading standing officers, and there was a perception from a lot of the smaller agents that look, all they really do is target the larger corporates to get that big kind of the big headline there. Is it a very real danger if somebody is being slack and everything else that they will ultimately get caught out? Is that risk increasing, or are you still relatively unlucky to fall foul of these these compliance issues?
I think it depends on what you're talking about. Yes, the focus is always going to be on the big boys, because the big boys are the ones that'll generate the big penalties. And you've probably seen, as everybody has, some of the publicity about the big penalties that HMRC have issued against the big boys for money laundering, non-compliance. But of course, that only goes so far. They get to a point where they can't chase the big boys anymore, and they start to have to then filter it down to the smaller agents. And our experience with the clients we've got is that that's what's happening. HMRC are filtering it down. The National Trading Standards and Estate Agents, National Trading Standards, Estate Agents and Letting Agents team are now focusing more on the smaller agents. The legislation puts the obligation on everybody, so therefore, it's becoming more and more important that you get it right. Actual fact, compliance is not a big deal. I mean, I would say that because that's what I deal with all day long. I'm an anorak on the subject, and I know nobody's really interested in compliance at all. But in truth, it's a process, and if you get the process right, you get compliance right. And so that's really what we try and do with our clients is get them into that position. But the risks are getting higher and higher as time goes on because the focus is getting higher and higher. I mean, you just have to look at all the legislation that's been brought in for lettings over the last 12 months, 18 months. Then you look at this ROPA situation that's raising its head and looks like it's going to take off in the future. You've got to get things right, and the sooner you can get things right, the more you can focus on it. Especially in this time of year, moving forward towards the winter and Christmas, when things get quieter, it's a great time for agents to focus on compliance and getting the processes right. So that's what we're trying to do from now till January, February time.
And did lockdown or COVID, did that throw a curveball into any of this? Has it slowed down the amount of kind of compliance checks, or are they still just going on as usual?
No, it has slowed it down. Obviously, visits to agents was out of the question, and it doesn't look like there are many visits, if any, going on at the moment to agents because of the COVID situation. But that doesn't mean to say they're not doing any work, because I've already got clients who've had telephone audits from HMRC over the last few weeks. So they're still working, even though they're not doing as much or doing those branch visits that they used to do.
Okay,
again, it has to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned ROPA, so let's just deal with that right at the outset. What does ROPA mean to you? What's the what impact do you think that will have on agents?
Oh, now you're asking me a question really that I go against a lot of what's going on in the media and a lot of the organisations who are all saying how wonderful it is that agents are going to finally be regulated in this way. For me, it's all nonsense. It's all a complete waste of time. Whether it'll happen or not, we still don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen it been talked about for years and years. Back when I worked in trading standards in the 80s, it was being talked about, but never came to fruition. So, okay, let's assume it is going to come to fruition. It'll get watered down. It's already started to be watered down, and it really isn't going to achieve very much. The regulation on estate agents and letting agents is in place, and there are dozens of organisations who regulate agents already. You start off with trading standards and the National Trading Standards Estate Agents Team, and the Competition and Markets Authority, and the Advertising Standards Authority, and there's regulation over deposits, regulations over client money protection. There's the Property Ombudsman. The list goes on and on and on of regulators of estate agents and letting agents, and this won't change any of that. They'll still be regulating all the activities of estate agents. It'll just add to the burden of estate agents in many ways, and there'll be no additional enforcement of this, because there isn't the staff available to do it. There aren't the people around enforcing that can do anything about it.
So what would you have done differently with all of this then, David? That said, and obviously I hear exactly what you're saying there. How could they have improved the process without, for example, as you quite rightly said, this stuff always gets watered down?
I don't think they could have improved it. I think they've got everything in place to actually make sure that estate agents comply and make sure estate agents provide a good service and ensure it protects consumers. It's all in place. Okay. There's no regulation. There's no enforcement of it because the staff are not available. The enforcement of it, in many respects, is done. A lot of it is done by HMRC because of money laundering being a high profile. That's not going to change. Trading standards do some enforcement, but now they're passing a lot over to the property ombudsman because they don't have the capacity and the staff to deal with it. So the property ombudsman deals with it. And how this will change anything, I just do not know. There's an old saying about legislation and about the law. The law is for people who want to comply with it, and it's very, very true that agent wants to get it right, then they'll come to us and they'll make sure they get it right. If they don't want to get it right, they won't come to us and they won't get it right, and they have the risks of non-compliance and the risk that one of the regulators will pick them up. But you asked me a question about risk, and I think risk is a big area for us, because we get asked lots of compliance questions, and some agents focus on things they don't need to focus on because they risk that non-compliance will cause them a problem. And then other agents focus on the high-risk areas, which is important to get right. So a quick example then. GDPR.
Our old friend.
Wonderful. There was a mass of hysteria about GDPR when it all changed back a couple of years ago, and we were saying, don't worry about it. It's fine. You don't need to worry too much about this because there'll be no regulation, no enforcement of it. Can't be, because the Information Commissioner's office is based in Cheshire, and they've got about 400 people that work there. Yet about 750,000 businesses to regulate and enforce, and so there's going to be very little attention on estate agents and letting agents. So get it right, and right was easy. You get your website information right, you get your privacy policy on there, you get your internal policies on data protection in place, and then you can ignore it.
It was always focused on material breaches, wasn't it? You know, the real rogue agents, sorry, not just agents, but the rogue businesses were ignoring it pretty much slipshod, weren't they, in terms of their...
you look at who are the ICO, Information Commissioner's Office, going to focus on? They're going to focus on Facebook. They're going to focus on Google. They're going to focus on Barclays Bank, on Tesco's, on the big players in the marketplace who have masses of information on individuals and don't always use it in the way that they should. And then the ICO can issue big penalties, which we've all seen big penalties being issued against those guys. And has anybody heard of any penalties being issued against estate agents?
Well, not to my mind.
I really don't know of anything.
David, how do you quantify that risk element you were talking about before? So what a lot of people will do, obviously, who come at it from, let's say, the glitzy end of, generating leads and earning money from marketing there. Clearly, one of the huge dynamics of from the compliance end is avoiding those fines, and obviously they are out there. But given the propensity that they're actually being awarded it's quite difficult to really say, look, you are looking at, if you don't follow these rules, potentially a fine of XYZ per year if not done correctly. Is that one of your real challenges, that to get across to people what this can really, the damage it can do to a business?
It is a challenge, yes, and lots of agents stick their head in the sand and don't take any and think that if they ignore it, it won't affect them, and sometimes it comes back to bite them. But it's all about the risk, and we will focus for our clients on the high risk areas. We'll give them everything they need for compliance, but we focus on the high risk areas. So when you look at some of the things we do for GDPR purposes for our clients, we have a pack that we supply to them that will get them to where they need to be, and then that, in essence, is the end of the story for those situations. When you look at money laundering compliance, different kettle of fish. That is very important to get that right because of the risks. HMRC are very aggressive enforcers that will deal with them for tax and VAT purposes, and we all know what happens when you get it wrong. There's penalties to pay if you don't pay your tax on time or you get your tax wrong. There's investigations that take place. And that's the guys that are doing the HMRC enforcement for money laundering purposes are the same guys that are doing the tax investigations. So therefore, you know where it's going, and you know that it's going to be problematic. So we will focus and give a lot of help to our clients on money laundering, and probably the last 5 years or longer, that's been a big focus for us, is getting our clients compliant with money laundering regulations.
So you've been going a huge amount of years, and obviously that's led to a diverse range of solutions. Could you just give us an idea of the different solutions you have for agents and what problems they're solving?
Yeah. Well, we start off with right at the beginning. If you're new to agency, you need to make sure you get things right. So we start off at the beginning and say, right, these are the registrations you need to do in order to start your estate agency. Here's the information you need to have on display within your branch in order to make sure you're compliant. Let's have a look at terms of business to make sure you've got your terms of business right, because there's lots of information you need to put in there, and that changes quite regularly with either legislation or ombudsman changes. So we're reviewing terms of business continually for agents. So once we get the basics right for them, we then start to look at the processes they've got in place to make sure they're compliant. So we'll do health checks for them, go out and spend the day with them, making sure they've got everything in place. And quite often agents have got things missing. But by the same token, they're focusing in the wrong areas as well. So we tell them that they can rationalize some of the processes and still be compliant. We'll do, for bigger agents, we'll do branch audits to make sure their branches are all compliant with the expectations that the head office have got. We provide our clients with compliance packs for various things. So if you want a GDPR pack, we can provide you with one, and that will give you basically a run through of what you need to do and how you need to do it, and give you some standard documents that you can edit to get the right sort of things in place. So you've got an internal policy document or a privacy policy that covers what you need it to cover. We've got money laundering compliance packs, which will give you everything you need to make sure you're meeting HMRC's requirements. We do training. A lot of my work used to be face-to-face training. I used to be all over the country doing face-to-face training a few years ago. But then we set up online training.
Okay.
So 14 courses on our platform, which gives agents a selection of courses that they can give to the staff, whether it's sales or lettings, negotiators, listers, whatever. You can choose the courses that you want, and it's all done online, and they all get certificates, and it's an annual process so that everybody keeps up to date, and it is regularly refreshed on all the requirements they need.
So that basically will give them an actual test to fill in, will it? They need to actually interfere. So, and then accreditation at the end of it. That's nice. Okay, good.
Yeah, they get certificates at the end of each individual gets a certificate, and the company can log on and see where everybody's up to and who needs to take various courses. And online training is the way forward. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, of course.
Even if you put COVID to one side, everything is done online these days. So the online training is great, because it means you don't have to take staff out of the business. They can do it at quiet times. A lot of the people on our system, we've got 8,000 individuals who train through our system. A lot of them do it at weekends and in the evenings, because they can log on anytime and take the courses. They can retake the course whenever they want to do, if they want refreshers. So it's definitely the way forward for training.
Just fits into that whole Netflix lifestyle, doesn't it? Though it's delivering content at a point when you're ready and is convenient for you.
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing it since 2008, providing online training. It was a bit tricky in 2008 to be providing online training, but I knew it was the way to go, and so we set it all up then. And it was say 12 years ago, it was difficult to get any agent to sit up and take notice of online training, because there were a lot more traditionalists out there who wanted face-to-face training. Now, online training is fairly standard for lots of agents in lots of areas. So
It's a bit unfair, David, but I don't mind being a bit unfair. What percentage do you think you think of agents are compliant? I appreciate that's a real curveball, but I'm a simple man.
Well, in terms of all our clients, then they're all compliant.
Yeah, great. I was hoping you'd say that at least.
But the truth is, I think a large percentage of agents are not compliant.
Well, and that's my perception. I mean, I love agents. Obviously, it served me very well. But I think the nature of agency and some of the leaders are they're go-getters, they're salespeople.
Absolutely.
And if they're anything like me, detail is not our forte. And that, unfortunately, as we said, it's not something you just can ignore in any shape or form these days, is it?
No, you can't ignore it, and I absolutely get what you've said about the leaders of the business need to list properties, they need to sell properties, they need to find tenants, they need to get out there and earn the money, and attention to detail is not important. If it was, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing.
But there needs to be a transformation, doesn't there, to actually not seeing it as an add-on or some other element. It's just a fundamental ingredient of doing the sale itself, isn't it? That's, as you said yourself, building that into the process, whether it's GDPR or whether it's literally just getting the property up on there. There are a series of steps that simply have to be built in. And really, if you do have a process, it's not too onerous, is it, to add these steps in?
It's not, and it is, and I say it all the time. It's a process, and if you get the process right, you get compliance right. But I have got clients who are leaders in the field of estate agency and letting agency, and they're not interested in compliance. The guys are just not interested. So what we do is we start to move down. We start to look at people within the business who might be able to have that attention to detail. And someone, even if you've got one branch, tends to be someone who has an attention to detail within there.
That's very true, isn't it? That kind of what do they call it when they categorize people? I don't know. They by colours. These are the greens, the analytical people, the ones that understand process well. Ordinarily, every business does have them. I mean, admittedly, they're quite often in the property management department, but that's just
you build a team, don't you, to make sure that you're providing all the service you need to provide, and you're doing what you need to do, and having somebody with that attention to detail is part of a team. You need it. You need to have somebody like that. So we'll quite often say compliance should be moved over to this individual here, who might not be one of the managers or one of the directors. It might just be a receptionist. It might be a negotiator, but their attention to detail will make sure that the business complies, and so that they can focus on.
And if that person can save you any of these fines, it'll be the best investment you've made in your team, won't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, everything we do doesn't make anybody any money. All it does is stop the money from filtering out the bottom, and that's what you want to do, is to make compliance as simple as possible, as costless as possible. You don't want it to be costing you a lot of money, and you want to make sure that there's no holes in the bottom of that bucket, and that means you're going to lose any.
Is it an unfair and lazy tag to, as many people call it, the business prevention unit?
I'm used to that. I've been called that for years and years, so I'm definitely used to it. And obviously I don't see it like that. I see it making sure that you're acting in a professional manner, because you don't want the bad publicity. Forget the penalty. You just don't want the bad publicity that goes.
And you were talking about Roper before. One of the key challenges, of course, is because just because you're doing the right thing, if the guy down the high street, gets caught out, all estate agents are labelled with the same brush, unfairly as that is, isn't it? And that's the problem with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's bad in every profession, but in estate agency and letting agency, it seems to be the media are on it in a flash as soon as there's anything there. And that then gives the reputation that estate agents and letting agents have got.
It's their go-to lazy scoop, isn't it? Basically, let's. We haven't had an estate agency story in a few days. Let's get another one.
Yeah. The top 5 most hated professionals in the country, and you'll get letting agents or estate agents in that list.
I think people are getting up that list quite quickly, so we'll get there. We'll get there eventually. We'll replace them. David, give us an idea of why customers choose you. What sort of client chooses you?
All sorts choose us. To be honest, we work with some of the biggest, if not the biggest, and we work with single branch agents, and we tailor our service to business and the client that we've got. So we can provide online training for some of the biggest agents in the country, but we also provide it for the smallest.
Okay, and I mean, I did have a look. It's worthwhile anybody having a look at your excellent website there. The names your clients jump out on the page from there, as you said, from the smallest to from the smallest market leaders right through to some of the biggest corporates in all parts of the marketplace. So I think that should be that should be great for other agents to feel you've got the confidence that you've seen it, you've been there and earned the badge, haven't you, on pretty much all of this?
To be honest, I have. Yeah, I've done work for all the agents. You know, you name any of the big players in the market, and I've done work for them.
Yeah.
And yes, we've provided online training for 2 or 3 of the very big players here, and ultimately they used us as a bit of a trial. Let's see how online training works for 12 months, 2 years. And then they've set up their own training system online because they've realized it works. And so, that with the big players, that's how it works. And I don't have a problem with that. That's how it's always going to work. But for the small agents, they don't have the capacity or the funds to be able to set up the things that we've got set up. And so they will stay with us because it's cost effective for them to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, people on our system that individuals do 14 training courses, and the cost to the client for one person doing 14 training courses can be as little as £25.
Yeah.
And so it's almost a no-brainer for them to.
You're not able to. That is people's perception, isn't it? The minute you're getting to any level of training development, God, this is going to cost an arm and a leg. And actually, that is one of the beautiful elements of online training. Is the cost element, to a large degree, goes out of the window, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And most of our new clients are surprised when we start to talk figures with them. And it's got to be that way for us. I've been doing it for a long time, and at the start, compliance is bottom of the pile from an investment perspective. And so, if you've not got your figures right, and you're not being very competitive with what you're doing, then it's just going to go out the window, and it's not going to happen. So we've always kept our fees as low as we possibly can. In order to generate the business, which we've done over the years. So.
I felt like I was going to go a bit like This Is Your Life, because we've got one of your clients waiting in the green room for us, haven't we? So I'm going to let's just bring Jordan in. Hello, Jordan. How are you? You all right?
Hi, Simon. Yeah, not bad. Hello, David. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
You haven't polished off too much of the complimentary drinks in our green room, have you?
No, not too many. Just the coffees this morning. So you should be okay, hopefully.
Early even for us there. Jordan, thanks very much for joining us. Obviously, you're from the prop tech auctioneering for Ion Property. Do you want to just give us an idea of how you guys work together, how that relationship developed?
Yeah, of course, no problem at all. So, as you rightly said, our background is essentially prop tech. So we are a supplier to the estate agency industry, probably best known for auctions. We also do compliance and conveyancing. When we wanted to get into AML compliance a couple of years ago, we looked to who was available in terms of expertise in AML compliance. And David really stood out to us as someone who'd be able to assist with that project. We've worked with David and his company for a couple of years now. A relationship. I'd say so, David. Anyway, would you agree?
Sorry, I missed that. You went. Did
you lose me? Sorry. I was saying I'd like to think we've got a good working relationship, David. If you would agree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
Good. Yeah. That's fine. So it's been a couple of years now, and David's really been fundamental in setting up our AML compliance product. So we, being a tech-based company, the technology side of things wasn't a problem, but really where we went to David was for that compliance expertise. Our network of agents were telling us that AML compliance was something they were concerned about, and something they really wanted a solution for. So we're using our tech background, put together a technology solution, but we really use David's compliance brain and know-how to create a lot of the mechanics behind that. So an example of that is when a estate agent adds a client to our system, so be that a buyer or a seller, the first thing we do is establish if that client is low, medium, or high risk. And that's based on a questionnaire that is done on that client. So in order for us to work out the level of risk, we need to understand what creates higher level of risk in AML world, which David was able to advise on. We've also had a range of training material put together by David as well, which has been fantastic. So we've got training videos, training material which the agents have access to, and also a compliance helpline. So if our customers are struggling with any AML issues, they can go through to David and his team and get some advice, and the feedback on that's been absolutely fantastic.
Jordan, that's really interesting that you were saying that actually this was driven by your own clients asking you for information, for help and assistance. David, was that like a moment for you where people were saying, finally, it's come around to my way of thinking of compliance?
Well, yeah, I must admit, I'm not used to that situation occurring. It's usually agents generally come to us when they've got a problem. And sometimes that is quite often too late if they've got a problem.
I was going to say is that I can imagine that's always the horse has bolted then, isn't it? It's like all of these things. It's about a preparation and insurance policy rather than damage limitation, because by nature then too much has happened, hasn't it?
Yeah, and in truth, with working with I Am Property, it was a situation where from a money laundering perspective and compliance with money laundering, there are various companies out there that offer some sort of solution to it, but it isn't they don't really provide the real deal for estate agents. They provide a generic semi-solution is what I'd say. Those companies would tell you differently, but in truth, estate agency is different than anybody else as far as compliance with money laundering is concerned. You might think it's just the same, but it isn't. It's different. And so I was looking at producing something for estate agents specifically that met their obligations. And the conversations I had with I Am Property back a couple of years ago just coincided at the same time as I was looking at this. They were looking for a solution for their clients. And so what we did was we used my expertise on knowing what agents needed to do and how they needed to work to get compliant with I Am Property's tech solution and tech people to build this thing. And so we built this platform, and it is the real deal for estate agents, that's for sure. It does everything they need right from the go on meeting their obligations. So they can get from us, they can get the training they need to comply. From us, they can get the compliance pack with all the documentation they need to comply. And then they've got the I Am Property platform, which is simple and straightforward to use, but it walks you through every step you need to take, from identifying the owners of the property to doing risk assessments to establish what level of due diligence is required, and then gives you the opportunity to do the level of customer due diligence required. I'd recommend it to anybody to try it out.
It's a fantastic platform, isn't it? It really is. It really is impressive. And Jordan, I'm guessing that one of the key things you're trying to do within that platform is to almost have a kind of single sign-on ethos. So you might be using different partners, but actually for your member and client agents, they're really all just brought into it from one place on the platform. Is that right?
Exactly, that's right. Yeah. So I mean, we have customers that work in all different areas of our business and use either one service or all of the services we offer. But ultimately, agents who are using our auction service can also have access to our compliance service, so on and so forth. I mean, for me, when we first started speaking to David about looking at putting together this compliance platform, the thing that jumped out at me and made this a real no-brainer for us to get involved with is prior to this system, agents were maybe having to log into 4 or 5 different websites to satisfy their EML requirements. So having to go onto land registry to download a land reg document. Then they may be using someone else for a PEP and sanctions check. They're using someone else for a risk assessment. They've got all these windows open, all these different websites, different bits of tech they're trying to use to get an end result. So we basically have just pulled everything together into one streamlined process, which makes things quick and easy and cost effective for agents to use. But ultimately, without David's experience and expertise, that simply wouldn't have been possible. And I think that's where a lot of other companies who've tried to do similar have maybe missed a bit of a trick, because they've took a more generic approach and it's not been catered to agents in the way that this one has.
That's really interesting. It's just a scientific fact, isn't it? The minute you start putting more obstacles via more sign-ons and things like that, at every stage there you drop and lose people out of the process, don't you? And it's wishful thinking that these people will come back and find it later on. It probably just doesn't happen, if we're honest with ourselves. And what's the take-up been, Jordan, of your members? Obviously, you've got a huge client base out there using the different things. Has it been obviously, was this for a particular niche, or has it gone sort of whole stream in your client base?
So not everyone. We've not really pushed it out everyone yet. We've been developing the product for coming up to 2 years. We did a bit of a soft launch in back end of last year. We launched properly in February, right before everyone went into lockdown, which caused a bit of a delay, as you can imagine. We've got about 500 branches using the system now. Last month we did about 6,500 risk assessments on the system. So the take-up's increasing massively. I mean, that was a 40% uplift from the month before. So that gives you an idea of the size of the growth. We're expecting to beat that by somewhere this month as well. So yeah, the take-up's been fantastic. Everyone who sees it, if they're using a different software package at the moment, realizes how much quicker and easier it is to use. If they're not doing anything at the minute, they realize that they really should be doing something. And this is one way they can do it and tick all those boxes that David would recommend them to tick to be compliant.
And I was going to ask you why ultimately you use Compliance Matters, but it seems very clear to me that, it keeps coming through time and time again. Essentially, like with all of these people, you want an expert, don't you? You want somebody who is an expert, not just in generic compliance, but specifically, obviously, has been there, and because it can get quite niche, can't it? And I suppose that's where the key elements of having somebody of David and his team's experience to call on just massively helps.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, David's compliance helpline that he offers, I'd say I'm probably one of the number one customers, because I'm constantly on the phone asking questions and picking their brains. But yeah, they've been absolutely fantastic. And yeah, having someone with that expertise is great. Certainly, if I was running an estate agent or a letting agent, I'd be straight on the phone to David to get my compliance set up without a doubt.
Well, there's the soundbite. We can wrap this up, guys. I mean, obviously, we're big fans of Iron Property. So basically, though, Jordan, from your point of view, any of your clients out there would like to know more information, they can reach out to you direct. Can they just there, or do they need to go via David?
Yeah, either way is fine. They can go via David, reach direct to me. That's no problem at all.
Excellent. So excellent there. And what advice would you give? Is there anything, I mean, yours is a special relationship. Is there any advice you would give to agents, looking to team up with Compliance Matters? Anything that they can do themselves to help, if you like, the onboarding or anything else like that?
I mean, the biggest thing I'd say is just don't wait. A lot of agents I speak to have been thinking about doing something on compliance for a while, but haven't got round to it. It's not
grass, doesn't it? It's something so important that they keep putting it off and off, don't they? Which you've got to get started. That's the whole process, isn't it? Really.
it's not going to get any easier, is it? You know, I don't think HMRC are going to turn around and go, hang on a second, we no longer think a state agency is high risk for money laundering, so you don't have to do it anymore. It's only going to get harder and more restrictive. So you need to get involved with it now, build it into your processes now, start getting used to dealing with it. So as it does change, you can be kept in the loop and up to speed, and you don't get caught out and be one of those unlucky ones that gets a fine.
Yeah.
I'll come back to what I said, and I say it all the time. It's the process, and that system gives you the process, walks you through the process, and when you've finished it, it says you completed. Yeah. And that's what agents want. They don't know about compliance. They know about a state agency, and they know about selling properties, and so they need to be led through this and come out with a black and white process that at the end says it's complete, and they can walk away and don't have to worry about it, and not spend days and days worrying about it, and not spend time having situations where they're not compliant. This will make sure that you're compliant.
Is there a killer question an agent should be asking themselves that, if answered, means that they should definitely be talking to you? You know, is it literally just something like, do you have written down procedures, or is there something more, a more targeted question that really would show to an agent that they have to get on the phone?
To be honest, there isn't, because there are so many compliance obligations that agents have got that I can ask them 20 questions, and I know that I'll get the wrong answer for between 5 and 10 of them, if not more, because agents don't fully understand what their obligations are. And the truth is, there is nobody else out there that's doing anything really that touches on what we do. You know, there's lots of agents who say, oh, I'm a member of Property Mark. Property Mark are not an organisation that are geared up to or designed around providing compliance assistance to their members. Yes, they do a little bit of that, and they provide some information, but they're not about compliance. They're about something completely different. And so we are focused solely on compliance.
And it's, as you said, you can't really dabble, can you? It's like being a little bit pregnant, isn't it? You're either going to be compliant or you're not going to be compliant. So, you know, if you're going to do it properly, talk to the experts, you know, get set up, rather than, well, I think we've got a procedure in place for that, but, you know, whoever in the back office has got that sorted, I hope and pray.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could dabble in sales and marketing and other online training courses, but I don't, because we focus on compliance, and that is it, because that's our area of expertise. And what we're offering actually to Kerfuffle members is
like this bit.
Yeah, is well, a couple of things. One very simple thing, which is a checklist for your website.
Yeah.
There are various obligations that agents have to display things on the website, and failure to do that can result in penalties. There's a £5,000 penalty, fixed penalty, for not getting some of these things right. So we've set up a little checklist that your agents can access.
Did the girls check our website? You got me paranoid now.
I wouldn't like to comment. I'll talk to you later.
I might take this offline and speak to you afterwards. After admitting to a former TSO that I'm not a detail man, that's probably a bit silly, isn't it? That's fantastic. That's really good. No, so there, you know, if you fancy stopping yourself getting just as you said, a 5K statutory fine, simple checklist there, brilliant. Just go to the landing page as we just highlighted there. There's a link off the back of it. Click on inquire, or go directly to David and just mention you're a Kerfuffle member. So that's fantastic. And you said there was, and then you said 2 for the price of 1. I believe you just said there. What was the
the other one is we do a compliance, which links into your question about what questions would you ask an agent. We're going to give Kerfuffle members a consultancy session. So bring us up. We'll go through compliance requirements with them. We'll talk to them about what they need to do, what they're missing, how to consult problems, and give them a good a good telephone health check to make sure they got things in place. And of course, if they need any of our services, we've got everything that they need to get them back on track.
So that's fantastic. So thank you for that. So straight away, you've essentially got a compliance MOT right there, having you check in with yourself. Don't question yourself anymore whether you think you're compliant or not. On that basis, just pick up the phone to you guys, and you can find out. So thank you very much for looking at that. Okay, that's really good. And let's just talk about, obviously, you mentioned earlier on that you tried to keep the prices as cost effective as possible. Can you give us a flavour of some of these costs, what people can expect?
Yeah, I mean, we tailor all our services specifically to the agent's needs and requirements. And so, for example, we'll do a review of your sales terms of business for £100. We'll give you a set that's fully compliant with everything you need to have for that sort of figure. And it doesn't matter whether you do a sole selling agent, sole agency, or sole selling rights, multiple agency. It's all included, and it covers every area. For lettings, it's more complicated. In fact, it's a lot more complicated. It'll cost you £200 to get compliant set of lettings terms of business.
Yeah,
we'll come out and do a health check for you, spend the day with you. You're looking at around, with expenses, you're looking probably at around £700 for us to spend the day with you. But that will be an investment, because we will give you the documentation you need, put the processes in place, give you advice on things to change. It's the full day. Sometimes it takes more than a day, but it's the same price. We come out in a compliant state. And as I've said, the online training platform, you can get 14 courses for as little as £25 for each person. So.
So you said this is all investments, isn't it? Just in one tiny area. You said with the website, these fines start, in my experience, from around £5,000, don't they? And they go north very, very quickly for the more serious ones, don't they? So realistically, it's something you've got to get right. It really isn't optional. Otherwise, you're just, you're putting your business at risk, aren't you?
Well, you are. I mean, if you look at what some of the London Trading Standards authorities were doing last year, they were issuing penalties against agents for not having the right information on their websites and not having the right displays in the branch.
Yeah,
it's so simple. It's not rocket science. This to get it.
Frustrate you to see that when they, lots of this stuff is simple steps.
Oh yeah, and these authorities were making hundreds of thousands of pounds out of the penalties they were issuing, because they knew agents weren't compliant, and they just needed to walk into the branch or go onto the website, and they'd got their evidence. So, simple things are easy to get right, and that's what we do for our clients is make sure they've got the simple things, the straightforward things in place, and then we give them the wherewithal to ensure they can comply across the board.
Yeah. So final shout out then. Get in touch obviously with David or Jordan if you're an Iron Property client there. Make sure you got obviously this all important area and just put it to bed. Obviously, I love the idea of just being able to get the templates and just being able to tick that off and everything else there. Lovely to see, by the way, you two companies like yourselves working together like this, hand in glove. I think agents always tell us that they really want to see more of those kind of relationships deliver, so that they aren't jumping around and having to have almost a Jenga pile of companies. So you should be both applauded on that. David, Jordan, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time out to explain to us. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Simon.
All right, Simon.